All right, guys, today we are going to investigate a bad GPU. This is actually one that was sent to me by a subscriber, pretty cool dude out in North Dakota, I think it is. This is his, oh, I thought I heard something shaking. This is his 1080 Ti for the Win 3 that he sent me some videos on Twitter. You guys might have seen that interaction go down. He basically was saying that anytime it hits any sort of load, it will crash to the desktop and sometimes even like reboot the system and whatnot. What we're gonna do today is we're gonna investigate, see if we can't figure out what's going on here. I'll show you guys the troubleshooting technique I go through, how I'm gonna potentially fix it, and yeah, you guys can probably learn something. But first I gotta put together like a little temporary loop, because as you can see, it is a water-cooled card, not an original water-cooled card that he did put the block on. So there's a lot of stuff for us to investigate and to clean up and all of that junk. EVGA is proud to announce their all-new XR1 OBS certified 4K capture card. Record at 1080p 60 while you game at 4K 60 with HDR, with advanced pass-through mode that allows you to switch to 144Hz refresh rate at the press of a button, meaning no longer do you need to disconnect or disable to get the full capabilities of your display. To see the full list of capabilities and configurations, click the EVGA link in the description below. So I'm gonna start by leaving his block on. I've never really had a water block cause the card to crash, but there's a couple of things that could be happening here. One, it could potentially be over tightened. Let's say, so the thermal pads, and this is all, I'm just giving you guys food for thought. I'm not saying that that's what happened here. I've clearly not fired it up or plugged it into anything, so I don't know yet. There's a few things that could be going on here. One, there are different thermal pad thicknesses that go in certain spots on the graphics card, and I've had people not pay attention before, and they would put a thick one where a thin one is supposed to go. And typically what will happen then is you won't make good contact on the die with the block, and then you'll get overheating problems. If you were to use one that's too thin, then what would technically happen is it wouldn't make good contact on the parts where it's supposed to make contact with the heat pads, and then the die and then the standoff threads hold the block to a certain height so you don't crush the die or cause any sort of problems there. I've never seen a water block really cause any sort of physical damage to the card. So I don't know if there's correlation there. He hasn't really filled me in, and this was a little letter that he wrote me just kind of explaining what was happening with it and stuff so that I can kind of know what's going on with the card, although I've got a pretty good idea. He can run something like Heaven 10 times and be fine, and then run something like Time Spy or a game and crash to desktop like nearly immediately. So it goes to show you there's something weird happening here, in that the type of workload the graphics card is being asked to do definitely will cause a different reaction. And that's what it is that we're gonna try and narrow down here today. So I gotta put together a quick temporary loop because it is water cooled, just a pump res combo, radiator, graphics card, and then we're gonna throw it onto my overclocking rig. This is the one that we're using now, 10900K for some of our overclocking stuff. And then after that, I'm gonna go back and do some overclocking here and see if I can't get myself some good scores off camera. Remember, like I said, if you guys want to see how we do here, just keep going to Port Royal and refreshing the scores, and you'll see if we get anywhere. So I'm gonna put together the loop real quick. We'll come back and then recreate the problem. I hope to God it doesn't work fine on my system. That would be bad. Dude, it's the roller coaster loop. I didn't put any zip ties or anything on any of these fitting ends, so I really hope they don't go whatever. Okay. Oh. Oh. It's telling me, hey, stupid, you need to plug in a video cable. I'm going to show you today how to fix your graphics card that might be broken, but I'm not going to plug in power or cables or nothing.
Did every step wrong on the way.
All right, so as you can see right here, I've got precision up. I'm just kind of keep track of some things here. I want to keep track of the temperatures. As you can see, we're clearly perfectly fine under idle right here. Boost lock, I'm using precision and not afterburner because boost lock works inside precision, and all that does is force the card to go to its maximum clock, which right now, according to this particular BIOS, or this VBIOS, is 2000 megahertz. So I'm gonna turn that off because I want to observe normal behavior. I just want to see how far that was trying to go. Leaving the stock power limit, leaving the stock temperature limit. I really need to see here what's making it crash. Now, I'm not going to do Port Royal because that's, although it would put the card under plenty of load, obviously. I want to see what its DX12/rasterization type performance is going to be in terms of crashing. So I'm going to load 3D Mark, and I'm going to do Time Spy, custom Time Spy run for just graphics test, and kind of loop that because I want to see where it crashes, what its behavior is. I don't really want to do Heaven, although I love Heaven for like temperature testing, because he's already said Heaven is a test that will pass. And he always, windowed mode and looping. He always thought his card was stable. In fact, his initial thought was that it was memory or something, like system memory, that was wrong or bad because of the fact that he was testing with Heaven. And this is why I say all the time, although I like using Heaven for stress tests for temperatures, it's not a good stress test for stability because it's only one type of test. So we're just gonna go ahead and run time spy here. He also was running Passmark or PC Mark or whatever, whichever mark it is, that will test all aspects of your system. And then as soon as it gets to the GPU test, it will insta-crash. Well, that sucks. Just the fact that it didn't crash yet, but we'll just let it loop. Don't have sent this to me all the way from North Dakota, just to have it not do anything. Don't be that mechanic story. Well, it's been looping for a while. Coolant's definitely getting warm because I only have this fan blowing at it, doing anything. It's not crashing, which sucks because I'm still gonna go through these steps as if it were crashing. And this is like the worst possible scenario here, is that it's not. Well, remember the same thing with my friend, with the friend that lives in Alaska. And his computer, we couldn't get it to recreate the problems until we finally figured out it was a riser cable. That was actually kind of fun. But I went ahead and stopped it. What was our temperature when I stopped? It was like 40 C when I stopped it. So this is still clearly working just fine. It's got me thinking, what's different with my system versus his that could be causing a GPU stability problem on his end? Okay, doesn't matter. We're gonna download user benchmark because that's where he has a video on Twitter of it happening in real time and I could see it. If we get there here and it's not doing it, then we're really gonna have to start having discussions with him about, everything's just falling down. Discussions with him about what else could be going on in his system. The thing that really makes this a little bit more, difficult to troubleshoot is he swapped the graphics card. He put a different graphics card in his system, an older one, like it's an old 7000 series or something. He put that in his system and it doesn't crash. So it does seem very graphics card related. So I'm gonna be downloading user benchmark. Yes, there's a lot of people that do not like user benchmark for various reasons. I'm only using it because that is, like I said, a specific scenario. He was able to demonstrate it crashing. When you click run, it's just gonna show a little GUI window. In fact, I'll do it now because the processor will be fine. It's when we hit graphics that it should happen here. When you hit run, it just shows you sort of a progress bar here of what's happening. And on his test, as soon as it got to testing graphics card, initializing EVGA 1080 Ti or whatever it says, that's where it would just completely kick out and fail. Interesting. Oh, no, it's... His test never ran. There's nothing wrong with this card. I'm starting to suspect driver corruption for him. And this is where DDU would be extremely important for someone like him having a problem with the graphics card. Because as soon as that test initialized, in fact, I still have it up right here. Let's show you guys what was happening. So on his test, it's going through the memory.
Just get there.
It takes a little longer in his system.
There we go. I don't know if you caught
Yeah,
that.
and as soon as it started loading graphics, the whole screen went black and it rebooted the system. Like it physically rebooted it, which is really similar to something I was experiencing with on my AMD system that Phil figured out, like some of these motherboards are running just like a tad too low on voltage. See, he gets a blue screen with it and everything. We did not experience any problems whatsoever. The least invasive thing to do here, and I'm gonna go ahead and do this just because because I've had multiple graphics cards stuck on this test bench, and this is my LN2 overclocking rig. I don't want any remnants of other graphics cards that's sitting in here. I want a very fresh, clean install. We're gonna go to, you can download it from various places. We're gonna download DDU. We're gonna restart in safe mode. And this is the part that throws people off, is they don't understand that this is a program that needs to be run in safe mode. So go down here to the Windows key, the Windows button, go to the restart button. So click power, and then go to restart, but hold left shift. Now you can let go. By holding left shift and clicking restart, we'll bring in the restart options. And this is where you can tell yourself to reboot into safe mode. This is also very important if you're having any sort of weird issues with your system and you want to verify you want to do true clean reinstalls or removal of software, do it in safe mode, because safe mode will only run the absolute necessary core system files for your operating system. And a lot of times if files are being accessed or are currently active in the registry and such, when you go to uninstall them, there can be lingering files and stuff. And safe mode is the best way to do any sort of troubleshooting on your system. So speaking of troubleshoot, to get there, click Troubleshoot, click Advanced Options, and then go down here to Startup Settings. Click Restart. That's now gonna automatically launch the restart or the start options, which will give you safe mode. Windows used to allow you to hold like F8 to get these options to show up during reboot. For whatever stupid reason, Microsoft felt that it was important to remove that option. And I think maybe it's because people would have something bumping their keyboard or bump F8 and they would think something, like they would see this and think something's wrong with their system. But Microsoft, as we know, is staffed by a bunch of idiot monkeys now anyway. So we'll go ahead and do number 4 because we don't need networking, so just push number 4. We've now said we're booting in safe mode. So you also notice it doesn't load any of your background stuff, it doesn't load any drivers. It's literally basic VGA driver that's run, that's built in within Windows, because it's gonna remove any third-party type of stuff. Type of stuff. So what you're gonna do now is navigate back to your DDU, which for me it's in downloads, just double click it, say run anyway. Thought I extracted it, I guess not. There's the folder. There it is, and then it brings up the GUI. This is basically just warning you like you should have backups and all that sort of stuff because, well, this is really just legal mumbo jumbo. They're absolving themselves from anything you break. In this case, I am gonna be removing GPU driver. It is an NVIDIA. So you can see here, you could choose AMD or Intel. Typically you'll do clean and restart, which is what we're gonna do. If you were uninstalling more things, like one of the things we have to do with our test bench often that we throw a dozen different graphics cards on sometimes in a single weekend or a single week when we're testing a new graphics card, it's important to, when you switch from AMD to NVIDIA, clean all the AMD stuff off, do a fresh install from NVIDIA and remove all the NVIDIA stuff too. But DDU, Intel, iGPU stuff, if we don't want anything messed up there, if we don't want any lingering NVIDIA or AMD, I'll remove everything and then start fresh once again with a new system install or a new system restart. So we're gonna do clean and restart. This might take a few minutes, might take 10 minutes depending on the speed of your system, but it's gonna go through now and it will give you an update as to what it's doing. It will remove every piece of that driver wherever it is installed. The nice thing is that the team at DDU knows where all of these components are installed and removes every single one of them. Because even if you click the clean install button on the NVIDIA driver or even the AMD driver, it will install the main driver components fresh, but a lot of the little subcomponents it will oftentimes just overwrite because it doesn't consider them to be critical. But you'd be surprised how much system stability that you can start to impact your system with when you start overwriting those files or leaving them like old traces of old driver files with new files. It's always important to just DDU, clean install, new driver, and it 9 times out of 10 will fix your issue. So that is the first thing I would do then. So I've got a fresh driver here, 146.09. That's the latest driver from NVIDIA. If you go to install this right now, it might fail because Windows right now might be trying to install the baked-in driver that's included with the latest Windows update, which is more often than not going to be like 4 or 5 versions old, which is fine. It'll get you up and running. And then you can do an install on top of that one and typically be fine. The problem really is whether or not you've installed 3 different graphics cards and you've just done express install over the top of 20 drivers in a row, depending on how old your system is. If you've never DDU'd your system in 3 or 4 years and you've just had driver installs on top of installs, then you can start to see some weird fragmentation. But in a fresh DDU like this, I don't feel bad about that because oftentimes what changes is the core components. But I'm gonna do custom advanced anyway. This is the way I always do it. Perform clean install and hit next. Depending on how old your driver is that's currently installed, it may or may not restart your system in the middle of the install. So that's something I just want to put out there is I've seen people ask me like, how come I click it clean install sometimes and it goes install done and other times it will restart itself in the middle of the wipe? Well, that's because it may have gone in like right now. It just, no, actually it installed. So if it were to go black and restart, that's oftentimes it cleaned the registry of older files and it has to restart. So you might get a different type of behavior, depending on how old your system is. All right, so now that our latest driver is installed, if that doesn't fix your problem, there is one more step we can try if you think it's software related. This is one that I never really tell people to default to. This one's somewhat invasive. It might be a little bit scary. This particular card does have a dual BIOS, so I'm not too afraid of it. And yes, we are going to talk about reflashing the firmware or the BIOS on the card. Now you're probably asking yourself like, oh my God, where do I get the BIOS? This sounds scary. What tools do we need, et cetera, et cetera. So we're going to go ahead and do a Google search for EVGA 1080 Ti for the Win 3, for the Win 3 BIOS. So this will typically bring us to, we can find a result here, usually from Tech PowerUp. Here we go. Tech PowerUp's a neat site. It's got a vBIOS collection. And what happens here, people will upload their vBIOS, and then you can actually go in and download it. But before we start downloading BIOS and stuff, we also want to download GPU-Z. And the reason why we want that is because we want to be able to verify that the vBIOS and all that stuff that we're downloading is going to be compatible. Now, this isn't something that is typically too much of a concern as of Pascal and newer. However, if you're doing this with, say, an older card, if you're trying to follow these steps with a 700 series card, it's important to remember that back in the Kepler era, and before, there may have been a manufacturing change in the die. And so you might find that one BIOS is not compatible with another. I actually, back in the early days of this channel, had a brand new 780 that I bricked within 10 minutes of owning the card, simply because I was going for massive overclocks and I was doing a custom BIOS flash, and I did not pay attention whether or not it was Rev A or Rev B. And I flashed a Rev A onto a Rev B card, and I bricked it so hard the EEPROM was completely corrupted and absolutely non-recoverable. Now the EEPROM or the EEPROM chips are soldered into the graphics cards. They're not just pressed in there like they are in a lot of motherboards. That was a 10-minute lifespan on that card, and I learned a very valuable lesson then. Now since then, we haven't had too much of an issue with different revisions. And it's kind of scary because there's talk about NVIDIA potentially moving off of Samsung back to TSMC amongst the 30 series cards, which could mean if they don't change the name, if they keep it 3080 and it's not like 3080 Ti, you might see now a Rev A and a Rev B, because Rev A could be Samsung, Rev B could be TSMC. So it's kind of a wait and see. I'm a little afraid of what that could potentially mean. So what we're going to do now with GPU-Z up and running is we're going to take a look at our BIOS version here. So we're on 8602394092. And here's that revision I was talking about, revision A1. And you could see revision B1 on certain cards. You want to make sure the revision is the same. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go to Tech PowerUp, and we're going to compare now this particular vBIOS to the one that we have currently installed on our card. 86023901.90. This is 40.92. Now that's fine. That just means that there are different BIOS that were installed over the lifespan of the For the Win card, and that's perfectly fine. As long as the 860239 match on both cards, then it's going to be a compatible BIOS. So what I want to do now is I'm going to go ahead and download this BIOS. There's another thing we need to download to make this all work. That's NV Flash download, and they'll probably have that on Tech PowerUp as well. Just click download now. So here's what we're gonna do now. We have a folder that our NV Flash is located in. We have the BIOS that we downloaded, which is this one, evga.gtx1080ti.11264. Right, so we'll just move that folder over, that file over here. This is the ROM file. We can rename this to whatever we want. We'll just call it 1080ti, there, 1080ti.rom. But now we need to open all of this in a prompt. And again, you do this all at your own risk. Come over here to start, type run. Right-click command prompt, run as administrator, click yes. Up here in the folder of the NV Flash, you can just click there, Control-C for copy. So this is the old DOS me talking here. And then we're gonna Control-V there. Actually, nope, I just said I'm a DOS guy, I did it wrong. So we're gonna CD space Control-V. There, now we are located in our DOS prompt, or command prompt in this case, to this file location. Now here is the command, NV Flash space -6 1080ti.rom. So now what it's doing is it's starting NV Flash. It just turned off the driver, and now it's saying, do you want to replace this driver or this VBIOS with this VBIOS? If you have a single BIOS card and you are scared, this is your point of no return. The second you hit yes, it starts writing over the EEPROM. Whether it matches or not, because I use -6. If you don't use dash, there's different dash commands that can tell it, like ignore subset mismatch, ignore things. I do that because in this case, it might have said these BIOS don't match. It's not going to write because it wants to write the right BIOS. This is the right BIOS, but there's the sub numbers on there are not the same, so it's going to warn you about that. And the other thing that's showing right here is the PCIe ID. So you can see ID. So you can see the two different versions of the BIOS don't match, but it's not going to give me an issue writing it because you can see the ID actually matches number for number. So I'm showing you the things you need to kind of think about before you decide to go forward with this. Because this is a dual BIOS card. If I were to brick it, I could literally flip the switch and still be up and running. So there, I hit yes. It is now writing the firmware image to the EEPROM. It only takes a few seconds. It turns the driver back on afterward, and it will then tell you that it doesn't do anything until you do a restart. So now I'm going to go ahead and restart the system, because I think a lot of people don't realize this. The firmware is only loaded at boot, and then once it's up and running, that firmware isn't really doing anything anymore. It's already kind of loaded itself, and now it's running off of that. And when you restart the system and it's posting, it's rebooting and reloading that EEPROM firmware again. We've got an image. That's a good sign. I'm curious as to whether or not it's going to go to 2000 megahertz or lower. Could go higher. Sometimes they find with BIOS efficiencies and manufacturing efficiencies with certain versions. In fact, over the time of the lifespan of a card, they could have 3 or 4 different versions of the exact same card with slightly different megahertz ranges because of yields and different binning and such. So you might have a For the Win 3, but a different actual product name or product number. And since I don't really have anything else here to do because it all works, I'm going to just run that user benchmarks one more time, because at this point I'm a little curious as to if there's anything we can do to make it crash. So it doesn't, I wasn't expecting it to make it crash because it wasn't crashing, but I'm just showing here that, it's clearly working. So unfortunately this video didn't go the way I hoped, but it's still a video nonetheless, giving you guys some sort of information. I'm glad I didn't start by taking the block off, which is one thing I was thinking, that there might have been a physical installation problem with the block, but as you can see, it's working perfectly fine for me. It ran Time Spy it looped many times without any sort of crashing or issue. This is the frustrating part. It quite literally automotive mechanicked me. It's only doing the problem for the owner and doesn't do it for the person trying to fix the problem. I am happy that it's a perfectly good card though, and send it back to him. And even though I traded him this card for a working one, I'm gonna send him back this card because I don't need the card I sent him, and now he has, I guess, more than he can kind of play around with. He never really took the plastic off this. This still has a protective plastic on there. I'll leave it, that's fine. Yep, it all works perfectly fine. So, all right guys, what are your tips on graphics card troubleshooting? It's frustrating. I can tell you right now, it is super frustrating as somebody that's had problems that have stomped me? Yeah, stomped my brain and stumped my stuff. And you start to really get upset because you start to just feel defeated by it. And sometimes it ends up being something really stupid. Like in the last instance, riser cable was the problem. A lot of people said it was because you were running a Gen 4 card with the Gen 3 cable and a Gen 4 slot. No, that wasn't it, because it was doing it with a non-Gen 4 card as well. Anyway, guys, time to go. Thanks for watching. Put your best troubleshooting tips down below for this particular problem that we described and showed you with the video clip there. And I guess I'll stay in touch with him to see if I can continue to help if the problems persist. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.